Hello everyone, welcome back to another coding tutorial. In the last lecture, we discussed inheritance and we also covered how that connects to polymorphism as well as encapsulation, classes, and objects. So now in this coding tutorial, we are going to connect all of these things together to make a more complex but holistic view of how you can create Java programs as you are going through your development journey. So basically, I've already set us up. So from your end, what you would need to do is create 4 different Java files. You can see our titles of those Java files at the top here. So we have ride.java, economyride.java, premiumride.java, and ridemain.java. Again, all of these are going to have different classes, but they will connect back to each other using inheritance. So based on how I named these files, we can pretty much assume that ride is going to be our parent class in this case of inheritance. This is going to be the class that those other classes of economy ride and premium ride are going to be using. Now, ride main is just going to be our main Java file that we're going to be using to run our code. So that does not necessarily play into the inheritance as much as the other 3 files do. So our 3 primary files here are going to be ride, economy ride, and premium ride. So first we're going to start with our ride class, which is our parent class. So I will put that here. We're going to say parent class. And inside of here is where we're going to be writing our code for our parent class. So of course we're going to have our fields or our variables that are going to deal with our class. So one thing we could have is, for example, the distance that the ride will be taking. So we're going to think this is like a Uber or a Lyft ride service, and we're trying to figure out the difference between the pricing and the distance and how users will interact with this said Uber or Lyft interaction. So first we're going to do our fields. So we'll go ahead and we will do our distance. So we could say here, let's say private double distance. Oops. That's going to be one of them. And again, inside of here, oops, forgot my... Oh, I didn't create it. That's why. So we're getting that because we didn't use it and we didn't assign a value to it. So basically what we're going to do now is we need to create some methods. We can create some other variables. So for example, each ride would have like a user's name or the rider's name, for example. So you can do that as well. So we're just going to put private string. And then we're going to do name. All right. So that is what we have there. So from here, we can add some stuff on later, but we're going to get into the methods. So the methods we will be having there is going to be here. Let me add more space. We're going to say methods. And here we're going to put the methods that we need to have. So in this case, we would use this information that we have to create the methods based on what we are trying to do. So an example of a method we are going to definitely need is going to be our constructor. So let's do that first. We have our constructor. So our constructor, as we know, is going to take in our class name. In this case, we have ride. And for this constructor, we could put for example, our double distance. And we could also put our string name. All right, so that's going to be our constructor. And of course, to set this, we say this dot distance is going to equal distance. And we're going to have this dot name is going to equal name. All right, so that's going to be a simple constructor that we are going to have. And that is our starting framework for that. So from here, we're going to continue to build our methods. So we have our constructor, we have our fields, we're going to build our methods here. All right. So from here, some methods we would have would be getters and which will allow us to get those values because we are having those private values. So we would have some getters. So we say public double get distance. Now remember, because we have those private fields or variables, we need to have the getters to allow us to access this information. Now, do you necessarily have to use private? No, but in the case of us connecting it back to encapsulation and our other topics, that is why I'm doing it here. So for this, we're going to say return distance. And then we're going to create another method that is going to be public string get name. And in here, we're going to say return name. All right. So we have our basic getters. Some other methods we're going to have are going to be like calculating price and also getting other things like setting some default values of things that could be returned to the user. So in this case, we could say public double calculate price, and this is going to help us calculate how much this ride is going to cost. So in here, we would do return distance, and then we'll just give it some sort of value. So we'll say distance times like 1.0. All right, so just the base value, because again, this is just our base class. Another thing we could do is add another method. So public string, and we're going to say the ride type. So get ride type, because again, this is a generic ride class that we're creating. It's not necessarily specific to anything, so that's why we're going to put that. And then we're going to just say something like this, generic ride, so we know what we're dealing with. Okay, so from here we have a standard basic parent class. Now, everything we see in this parent class will then be accessible and usable inside of our child classes we are going to create. So next we are going to go to our economy ride.java file, which again I have already set up. So here we're going to put child class. Not that a order matters, but I'm just going to put number 1 so we know that we have at least one child class in this case. And we can say for ride. All right, that's just a little notes. Now that we have a parent class, we need to create this child class. In order for us to create a child class, we have to establish that inheritance, which again is using that keyword extends directly after the class name. Now that we have the keyword extends, we have to tell it what class is it extending from. And in this case, our parent class is ride. So we're going to say ride. All right. Now, from here, we have public class, economy, ride, extends, ride. Inside of here, we are going to create a constructor because all of our classes are going to have a constructor. So we're just going to create that public, economy, ride. Then we're going to give it some information. Now, in this case, remember, our class is going to be extended from our parent. Our parent class takes in two parameters, which is double, distance, and string name. And that is what I'm going to just take from here so that we can keep everything in sync and save us a little time. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to paste it here. So we have that portion of the code. Now what we're going to do is we need to call the parent class. And to do that, this is where we're using super. So what we do is we say super distance and name. All right. So there we have our standard constructor. We're using super to call our parent class. Now, on top of that, we are going to be needing to do that method overriding. So to do that, we are going to create the two methods that our parent class had, which was the public double calculate price. That was one of them. I'm just going to create the frameworks for them right now and go back. And then we had public string get ride type. All right. Now go back and fill that in. So for this, we said return, and we're going to return our values. In this case, if we take a look here, we said for here, we have calculate price. Let's take a look at our parent. We have here that we are going to be returning the distance and 1.0. In this case, because we are working with this, please remember that our distance from our parent class is private. So for it to be accessible from another class, we have to use the getter here. So that's what we'll be doing. So in here, we will do return get distance because that will pull the distance from parent because it's private. And then we are going to then give it some sort of value. So we'll do something like that. Now, in this case, do we have to do it like this? No. The reason we're doing it like this and calling a method is because we're calling that getter to access that value. If we were to use public, we wouldn't necessarily have to do this step. We could have just said distance times blah, blah, blah. But because we set it to private, that is why we're taking it this route. And for our last method we have here, we're just going to also return some text. We're going to say return, this is a economy ride. So we're going to say that. And remember our other one said generic ride. This one's going to say economy ride. So overall, we have a good basis here. You see that we have a constructor. The constructor pretty much matches the class name. It matches the parent class structure. It takes in the distance. It takes in name. And we're also calling our parent class using that super. We also use our method overriding because, of course, these two methods are also used in our original ride.java file. So that is something we have there as well. So all should be well so far with what we have here. All right. So next we are going to go to our last file that we have as far as extensions or inheritance. That's going to be our premium ride. So we're going to say class, child class. Number 2, for ride.java. All right, and we're going to pretty much set it up the same way. We're going to do our constructor. We're going to go ahead and do public premium ride, and we're going to take in our distance and our name. In here, we're going to call super distance and name, and this is going to, this is going to connect to all right. In this case, the reason we're getting this error is because I did not extend my class, so that's why it's confused about super. So we're going to extend that to do our inheritance. Extends ride. So that handles that case. And now it is connected properly. Again, the next thing we have is method overriding. And then we could say our public double calculate price. You could say return. And in this case, because it's premium, we'll add some extra information to it. So we could do like 5. So we'll add a $5 charge. And then we're going to do our normal calculation of multiplying by our distance. So we'll say get distance. And then we'll just give it a value of what it's going to be multiplied by. And obviously, because it is a premium ride, it will cost more. So that's why we're putting a little bit more calculations into this. And we will also do another example. So public string get ride type. Remember, we're just grabbing that from parent. And then here, we're going to return what the premium ride is. Premium ride. All right, so we basically have all of that created on this case here. So again, you could technically create more ride types. So you could have did a shared ride type. You could have did like a bus ride type. I don't know. You could be creative. But we're just going to do 2 for this example. Now that we technically have all of our classes set up, we have our inheritance going on with our extends, we're ready to kind of test this out. So from here, we're going to come to our main method, and this is going to allow us to test our inheritance files. And here we're going to do our main method. So public static void main string args. All right, and then in here we're going to create our ride objects. So I'm going to add a little bit more space. We're going to do object 1, and this is going to come from economy ride. So what we do is you're going to first call the parent class, variable name, or the object name. So let's say that object name equals new. Then you're going to say class, or actually child class name. And then you're going to put in the parameters. And that's basically how you would kind of create that object. So that is what we are going to do here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our parent class name. So we're going to say ride. We're going to give it a object name. So we'll say ride1. We're going to say equals new. We're going to call the economy ride object, because that's what we want to work with first. Then we need to give it some parameters. So remember, the first one took in a double, so we'll just go ahead and put a distance. So we'll say like 15. And then the next thing we're supposed to be putting is a name. So we could say like, this is our morning commute. Now, name could have been your rider. Of course, you could specify, but we're just going to use name as labeling purposes for our trips. And so we basically have our object created. So that's our object. Now, using the object, we're going to print out the object's info, because we just have the object. We're not doing anything with it. So for this, we're going to just do a print statement. And we're going to call our object R1. We're going to say R1 dot get name. And then we are just going to print out the remainder of our information. So here, we're just going to do some formatting printing. Plus, we're going to do R1 dot get ride type. Then we're going to do the, let's see, plus. We're going to close that parentheses. And what else are we going to do here? Cost. Put a $sign. And then we're just going to simply add our calculate distance, or calculate price. Excuse me, calculate price here. So that is just going to allow us to see our information from our classes. And before I get into the other ones, I'm just going to go ahead and test this one out so we can kind of see what's going on. So from here, you see this is our output. We have morning commute, economy ride, cost $13.50. So it took in all of our information and it allowed us to use it. Again, we are only creating our variables in our ride class. So this is showing you how inheritance works. We did not go and create these variables or fields in every individual file. We are using them and pulling them from our ride class. And that is what's going on here. Same with our get distance, same with our get name. We did not have to create these getters and setters in each file. We are strictly using it from our parent class. So that is showing you the use of using inheritance. We're saving time, we're saving code, we did not have to rewrite it. The only thing that is different is the fact that our calculate price and our get ride type, we did some method overriding, but it still works perfectly fine. And as you see, it technically pulled that information from the child class because that is the one it is directly working with. Again, if we wanted to use the parent one, we could have used super, but we did not want to use it in this case. So that is one case of showing you how that works. Now to show you the other object. So object 2, we're going to do that one as the premium ride. And for this, it's pretty much going to be about the same. So what we're going to do is just copy and paste to save us some time. And paste it down here and just change out the information. So we'll do this R2. We will do this as premium ride. And we're going to change our information here. We'll just say 30 and we'll say afternoon. or night commute. And here we'll change our object information to R2. Because again, these classes have the same methods in them. So we can just simply do that. We're going to go ahead and test this out, and we should see the input or the output, of both of them, which here we have that. And you see our costs are drastically different. So that shows you a use case of that. Now, how could we make this a little bit more interesting? To make it more interesting, we technically could make these classes a little bit more customizable. So you could create customized methods that maybe cannot be found, for example, in the ride class or parent class or in another child class like premium. So for this, we could have said, for example, public like string get ride car. And in here, we could have simply said return this car is a standard 4-door car with a max occupancy of 4 people. All right. So that will be an example of that. And now what we're going to do is we can use that in our printout. So we have that. We edited in our economy ride. So we're going to come to our ride main and we're going to add some information here. And we could say simply system.out.print line. And we could say R1 dot, we want to get our, what did we name it? We named it get ride car. So we're going to say here that get ride car. And in this case, you see it says we need a field to do the get ride car because we are going to be creating it somewhere else. And that's why it's connecting to the parent. So it gets a little bit more tricky when you're dealing with this because at this point, when you're working with this information, it's basically saying we need to add in or reconnect the get ride car here. And that's what it did here. But that's because we did not create it in the parent. And technically, we are creating it from the aspect of a parent class. So it technically cannot understand what we're doing. So that is why I'm showing you this example. Yes, you can still customize it, but in this case, it would be more beneficial for you to create the object directly from technically your economy ride, except instead of your except from your parent class. So you could have done economy ride R3 equals new. And then I'm just going to copy this for now. C, V. And then in this case, we can copy this information here. Let's see. Just for testing purposes. Again, I always recommend doing this. It's better to play around with your information and your code to test out to see what can and what can't happen. Of course, most of the times I'm going to always do it the correct way, but again, doing live demos sometimes and showing you the issues you may come across could help you learn a little bit more. So that's why we are doing it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here. Let's see. Yeah, gotcha. Get ride. And we're going to take this out because we technically don't need it. In here, make sure everything looks good here. Now, I just basically also did that to kind of show you those issues that you can run across when you're not reading your errors and things of that nature. So that's why you saw those issues that we had, because sometimes um, it could pretty much just ask you to do like, hey, add this method, or quick fixes. But if you don't read them and you don't understand, it could cause issues. So that's why I was showing you how sometimes those quick issues in reads or suggestions can cause you problems. But again, I'm going to add a comment. We're going to say creating a object from child class. All right, and we'll go ahead and run this. All right, and there you go. So you see it still works. We're still technically using the parent class in our object 3. The only difference is we created our object from that child class and not the parent class. So yes, we did customize it. This class is the only class that has this information or this method. The other two do not. So you can customize your child classes, but if you do that, you do have to make sure that you are creating a child class object and not from your parent, like this one. Ride R1 and Ride R2 are a parent class, so that has no customization. Our child class, Economy Ride, has the customization, and that's where we created our child class, which again, it still uses the information we technically can pull from our parent class, but it allows us to use those customizations. So overall, that is inheritance for you. Yes, it is a little bit confusing when you're first getting into it, but hopefully this was straightforward and you can see those common issues you'll run into and the things you need to watch out for. But hopefully this makes sense and it will allow you to make more complex codes moving forward. So thank you for your time in this coding tutorial as always, and I hope to see you back for our next lecture.